Tony, it's Lazlo. How are you?
Hey, Lazlo, what's going on?
Good. Tony Ortega, the former, I don't know what you did at the Pitch. What were you?
I was the managing editor of the Pitch.
Managing editor. What does that mean?
It's like the number 2 person that helps out the editor-in-chief.
Okay, now you're the editor-in-chief. Are you the editor-in-chief of the Village Voice?
Yes, I am.
Jesus Christ, man, you went far.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite a jump. So they say you're not good enough to run the Pitch, but then you can run the Village Voice, which is what we model ourselves after, right?
Something like that.
Crazy.
Unbelievable. That's crazy. Anyway, Tony Ortega, our friend, we talked to him the last time. Scientology was upset with me for, I don't even know why. When I look back on that conversation, all the letters that were written, I'm the only guy in America who defends Scientology who's not a Scientologist.
Just about. I think so.
Yeah, and yet they still, I don't know,
they came
want to
after
squirrel
him.
me, whatever that means.
He's full of squirrel stuff, which means, I don't know, it means he's bad.
But that said, there's news stories about you. You are the head agitator now, as far as I can tell, of Scientology. And from what I understand, you have broken up, you personally have broken up Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes.
Well, I don't know that that's true, but it sounds really cool coming from you, Lazlo.
Don't be humble around here, Ortega.
Well, it's not just us.
Own it.
Well, what happened was we had some really interesting stories last week here at The Voice. Marty Rathbun, I think I've mentioned him to you before. He was once the number 2 person in all of Scientology, and he left in 2004, and then starting a couple of years ago, he's been blogging and criticizing the current church leader, David Miscavige. And this past year, basically since January, he's been leaking internal secret Scientology documents that come from Scientology's spy wing, the Office of Special Affairs.
Okay.
And they're really embarrassing documents for the church. They show how they retaliate against people, send private investigators after them. And for some time now, I've been aware that some of those documents spelled out an investigation against Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park. And the reason that Scientology went after them in 2006 was that in 2005, South Park had that incredible episode, Trapped in the Closet, where they made fun of Scientology's teachings and also made fun of Tom Cruise.
To this day, probably their most famous episode.
And one that's not played very often, right? I mean, they still kind of... I don't know if they would say
that.
Hey,
you can watch it anytime you want on the web. It's on demand on the web, and it's just as funny as it ever was. It's a great episode to watch.
But Comedy Central kind of listened to Scientology a little bit, right?
Scientology was really upset about it and has made it difficult for Comedy Central to rerun that episode. And some DVD releases of that season have not included that episode. So there's definitely been a lot of pressure on them about that episode. But what we didn't know until last week was the full extent of what Scientology tried to do in retaliation, and that was some documents that Marty made public and then some documents that I made public last week show that they went after Trey Parker and Matt Stone, their friends and their employees, with private investigators digging in their trash, casing their offices, trying to get a mole into their offices. And it's pretty creepy and scary stuff. So that story really blew up last week, and a lot of people picked it up, relying on the reporting that I did and the reporting that Marty did. And so today, or yesterday, I found out that a magazine in Australia, and it's a supermarket tab, and it's probably got about as much credibility as the supermarket tabloids we have here.
Which, hold on, I got to say, the tabloids here seem to have a lot of credibility these days. I mean, they've been right about a lot Stuff. I don't know how
the John Edwards thing, and
sometimes they're right, sometimes they jump the gun. But in this case, what they're reporting, this Australian magazine is saying that Katie Holmes saw those stories about Hollywood people like Trey Parker and Matt Stone being retaliated against in such a disgusting way, and it was the last straw, and she stormed out on Tom Cruise. Now, we don't know if it's true or not, but naturally, I decided to go ahead and take credit for that.
Right, good. So now, do we know what exactly Scientology did to Trey Parker and these guys?
Well, like I said, we have documents from inside Scientology which shows that they had private investigators casing their offices, digging up information on all their employees, and suggesting that they were going through the trash of all of these people, Trey and Matt, their friends John Stamos and Rebecca Romaine, and many of their employees. And so what we did was we talked to a private investigator who has worked for Scientology and asked him. In fact, he worked at that same time. He didn't work on that operation, but he worked at that same time, 2006, and he told us why they look through the trash, what they're looking for, what kind of documents you could find in the trash. And it was very creepy.
Now, there was obviously word after that episode aired that Isaac Hayes, who was a Scientologist and did the voice of Chef, was told he needed to quit the show. But
Right.
basically the church said, you need to quit, which would make sense. And because he left the show, I mean, just right after that, and then, of course, he ended up dying just a couple years later. But
Yeah.
is there any proof that they told him to leave? I mean, I just assumed that was accurate.
I think a lot of people assume that. I don't have any documents on that yet. I'm supposed to get some that explain a little bit more what Tom Cruise's role was in the retaliation against South Park. I'm hoping to get that soon. But I don't know. And I'm going to keep pressing to get more of these documents from my sources because I would love to know what really happened with Isaac Hayes and whether he was pressured to quit or if he quit on his own.
All right, and then the other thing is, if they were looking through I guess they were the Stamos family when they were married, right? And then the rest of the people who are friends with the creators of South Park and the employees at South Park, how come none of these guys ever came out and said, or at least I hadn't heard it, that, hey, there's private investigators around our house digging through our trash? You'd think someone would notice, right?
They might actually, Stamos and Romaine might have been broken up by that point already. I think the document actually said that. But I did get one producer from the show on the phone who is named in the document. So she was targeted. And she told me, you know what, if they were going through my trash, I'd never do it. And that is kind of the signature of Scientology. They do investigations in different ways. They do investigations where they just really want to get the information and they don't necessarily want you to know you're being watched. And then they do noisy investigations where they're very obvious about it and want to creep you out. But this woman told me that even though she was named in that document and it appears that she was investigated, she was never aware of it. I am talking to somebody. I have another one of these leaked documents involving another investigation that tangentially involved Tom Cruise, where a woman was targeted, and she definitely knew she was being looked at. So it depends on the investigation whether people are aware of it or not. But also remember, there were a lot of people named in these documents, a lot of Hollywood people. Hollywood, at one point I was working on a story involving the way movies get made, and somebody said to me, Hollywood is the last medieval, serf system. I mean, it's so insular. It's so people never talk about other people in Hollywood. So even if some of these folks did realize that they were being harassed, they wouldn't necessarily tell anybody else about it.
Gotcha. Okay, and then I guess my last. I don't even know if it's really a question, but because I think you've just explained it to me. But the last time we talked, the letter that I got said that this OSA, is that what you call it, OSA?
Yeah, OSA, right, Office of Special Affairs.
That they were going to investigate you. Now, you haven't brought that up to me yet, so I'm guessing you don't know, but they could be going through your trash and just very good at it, where you thought they would be harassing you.
Well, since we talked the last time, we found out that they have put their reporter from Freedom Magazine on The Voice. This guy's name is Jim Lynch. He is one. There are various ways that they investigate people and go after people. This is one way. They put Jim Lynch on us, and he has started to call people, and like he's writing a story about us. And so we found out about that several weeks ago. And so maybe that's all it's going to be. They're going to have a Freedom Magazine is this propaganda magazine that the Scientology owns. And maybe that's going to be the extent of it. Is Jim Lynch is going to write a story slamming us, whatever, and that's fine. I don't care.
Right.
But as far as anything more involved in that, is somebody going through my trash? I have no idea at this point. But you're right. That document that you got said I was going to be handled. And I've actually been contacted by some attorneys that warned me that that's very serious. So we'll see.
All right. Well, if anything happens, please let us know.
You know I will.
All right. Tony Ortega, the Village Voice. He single-handedly responsible for breaking up Tomcat. Good job. Hope you're happy.
Thank you, Lazlo.
See you, man.
Bye.